Roy Whiting, he'd be considered a modern-day boogeyman. Of course, with the help of DCF and all these other family protection agencies, he was allowed to drive in white vans and snatch children off the street. After doing only 5 years for kidnapping and molestation of a little girl, he'd be released in less than 2.5 of those 5 years. That's when he'd get his hands on the beautiful angel, Sarah. He would ultimately murder her and do the worst to her. He'd get convicted and sentenced to only 40 years and have some of that time reduced. However, whether it's karma, eye for an eye, the revenge of the angel Sarah, whatever it may be, he's been beaten, slashed, lost an eye from a toilet brush, sliced multiple times, broken ribs, fractured eyes, and most recently, gutted while he hid under the bed. Isn't it ironic that the boogeyman is hiding under the bed while he's getting gutted? The doors seem to not work. Let's get into it. The summer of 2000 was quiet in West Sussex until July 1st, when the 8-year-old beautiful Sarah Payne vanished from a wheat field while playing with her brothers. 17 days later, her body would unfortunately be found dumped in a shallow grave. The UK was horrified. The man behind it, the Chomo child killer Roy Whiting, a convicted child abductor just 5 years earlier. He had kidnapped and molested another girl. He served barely 2 years of the 5-year sentence. No GPS monitoring, no chemical castration, no restrictions. He was released and free to roam. That's why so many inmates slaughter them, stab them, poison them, so they could not get out and hurt kids anymore. Yet in 2001, this piece of shit was convicted of Sarah's murder. The evidence was airtight: fibers, blood, eyewitnesses, surveillance. The sentence, life in prison with a minimum term of 40 years. The courtroom was ice cold, but in the public's eyes and inside the prisons, that wasn't enough. They wanted vengeance, and they would get it. It didn't take long. Just 2002, 2 years after his conviction, the Chomo child-killing piece of shit Roy Whiting was walking through a blind corridor in HMP Wakefield. Surrounded by steel shadows and silence, that's when Ricky Tragaski struck. The razor blade was melted into a toothbrush handle, a ghost weapon. He came from behind and slashed Whiting's face open from jaw to cheekbone with a 6-inch gash. No officers nearby. Whiting had been allowed to move during a general transition. Though labeled high risk for assault by the prison officials, no one was there to escort him. The report, it would say blood sprayed across the concrete walls. Tragaskis was calm. When officers finally reached him, he said, "That was for the little girl." Whiting needed surgery. He didn't say much, but a long red scar down his face would speak for him forever. Like I always say, time doesn't exist, only opportunity. Whiting was kept in segregation, but segregation isn't protection. You see, out there, he was a predator to the weak, innocent angel, little girls and women that couldn't defend themselves that he overpowered. But on the inside, we were the monsters. We were his predators. Gary Vinter, a double murderer, had a plan. On an afternoon round, Vinter entered Whiting's cell with no resistance. Officers had unlocked the crossbars due to staffing confusion. The small failure gave Vinter the opening. He stabbed Whiting twice in the eye socket. Blood was pouring and Whiting was screaming, I can't see, I can't see." The shitty toilet brush was broken off into his eye, where he'd lose vision in that eye and also catch an infection from sepsis, from the shit that went inside of his body. He'd be hospitalized and lose vision in one eye, almost die from the infection of the shit, piss, jizz, and all the other stuff he put on that shit handle that went into his eye. It would take 7 years, but they'd finally get their hands on him again. Richard Prendergast and Kevin Hayden. By 2018, guards knew Whiting's life was in constant danger, and still it happened again. 2 inmates, Richard and Kevin, armed themselves with jagged wooden shanks and entered Whiting's cell while it was unsecured after a meal rotation. They didn't argue, they didn't yell, they just stabbed him again and again and again in the head, neck, and chest. The attack lasted nearly 30 seconds before a third inmate in a nearby cell screamed for guards. Snitching ass motherfucker. Only then did the officers rush in and separate the attack. One officer described the scene as like something out of a slaughterhouse. The Chomo child killer piece of shit Whiting lay gasping, slumped against the steel toilet. Half conscious, covered in blood, no arrests were made. The inmates were transferred, nothing more. However, the Chomo helper, the one who screamed for help and stopped Whiting from being killed, he also paid the price. Less than a week later, he was found in the showers with 2 broken ribs, a shattered orbital bone, and a broken jaw that had to be wired shut. It was a pretty clear message. No charges were filed in the retaliation. The victim refused to identify his attackers. That's how silence works in prison. That's how justice is supposed to work. Whiting survived, barely again, but now he knew something deeper. Even the ones who screamed for him wouldn't be spared. That's how prison works. If you eat with one of these creatures, talk to them, do anything that's in a nice manner besides slice them, hurt them, beat them, anything like that, you are considered just as bad, if not worse. The Coward's Retreat, a mission carried out by Andrew Light. The most infamous attack that came in February of 2024, it was pure humiliation. Andrew Light entered Whiting's cell yelling, "This is for Sarah Payne." Of course, he didn't fight back the chomo. He didn't do anything. He didn't even scream. He didn't fight. He just curled in the fetal position, dove under his metal frame bed, where he was stabbed downward, slicing into his back, ribs, sides, ears, as Whiting sobbed and bled. Here's where it gets worse. The responding officer, who was watching the attack, called for backup. But then, in the chaos and confusion, the other officers had accidentally locked the door behind them, leaving Whiting in the cell alone, unable to open the door, as he was getting stabbed over and over again, screaming under the bed, as the real monster, the real boogeyman, was trying to take his life. The mistake on the officer's part caused the chomo child killer piece of shit to be stabbed 5 more times. Finally, we're able to unlock the corridor and through the vestibule and get in there. Guards asked Light, "Is he dead?" He said, "I hope so." Whiting was stretched out, shaking, drenched in his own blood, but unfortunately, he lived, just barely. The most recent attempt will be done by an assailant who was convicted for murder. Neil Priest Smith, a lifer with a violent background, made 3 bomb hoax calls to distract staff, claiming explosions were planned around the prison. Then he armed himself with a razor melted into plastic and walked into Whiting's cell. With all the chaos, the officer spotted somebody out of their cell. He got caught, and he admitted to what he was trying to do. He said it was the 3rd time he tried to wipe this chomo off the face of the earth. He even hinted at involvement in the suspicious death of the chomo Whiting's cellmate, though it was never proven or prosecuted. Whiting's cellmate was found with his throat slit and hanging on a bed sheet. Neil was the main suspect, but no evidence could link him. He said he didn't want to do this shit for any type of attention. He said, "I just wanted justice for that little girl." The bomb threats, he gets sentenced to 40 more months. But doing life, who the fuck cares? The only thing he was mad about was that he failed 4 times in killing Whiting. Though his cellmate, who had helped Whiting out a few times, was found dead in a vicious manner, it's not the same. Because prison law is just like this. If you help them, you show any niceness to them, generosity, feed them, even open a door for them, say excuse me to them, you're just as bad, if not worse, and you will be hit as if you were one of them. Because out here, DCF and CPS and all these other agencies and people, they let these people thrive until somebody dies, like the precious little Sarah. On the inside, we're the opposite. If you've ever been nice to one of them, you get the same exact penalty. Earlier this year, though, he would get poisoned in his food that was covered with feces. Though he had survived blades to the face, shanks to the eye, ambushes, humiliation under the bed, but earlier this year in 2025, the war against him took a new revolting turn, one that didn't involve fist or steel. According to the internal correctional reports, not publicly released but confirmed by staff sources, Whiting's food was deliberately contaminated. Officers suspect the meal was tainted with human feces, likely introduced before delivery. Whiting reportedly took several bites before realizing something was wrong. He collapsed later that evening with violent gastrointestinal symptoms that was treated in medical segregation for suspected poisoning. No weapons was found, no charges filed, no one spoke this time. The true definition of a coward dies 1,000 deaths. Some fates are way worse than death. Slashed in the face, stabbed in the eye by a shitty jizzy toilet brush, gutted by 2 inmates, where the officers forgot to resecure his cell, stabbed while hiding under the bed, inmate calling in bomb threats to try to murder him over 4 times, his cellmate being murdered and ingesting human feces, who knows how many times. Though it's nothing of the fear and suffering that Sarah and her family had to endure, plus many of his other victims, but just knowing every single day he's in there, he knows the officers will lock him in there with killers, his food will be covered with shit, as it never ends. From dirty shit brushes to dirty shitty trays. Fuck him. Stay out. Stay free. Rest in peace, Sarah.